Hi, it's Kiffin Lobates here, and today's video is a resonance security video in which I'm going to talk a bit about passwords, because we have to face facts. Despite the existence of security keys and biometrics and all sorts of new techniques to try to protect our online accounts and our secret information through encryption and stuff like that, we're still stuck mainly with passwords. Most sites have not moved on to these new technologies, and I think it's worth talking a bit about how passwords are, or at least should be, used by developers to protect user accounts. Now, you as a user may think that you go to the website and you type in your password and it's sent off to the web server, and the web server checks that that is indeed the correct password for the account that you're trying to log in with, and then it lets you log in. But there's actually a lot more going on under the hood than that simple approach, or rather there should be. And when developers don't implement the full suite of protections for passwords, then things go wrong and accounts get hacked. So the first thing is that there should never be a database somewhere with your password stored in plain text, because if a hacker breaks into that database, it's then trivial for them to compromise all the different accounts that that website is storing. So what is done is a hash of the password is stored, and that uses something called a cryptographic hash function. This is a function where you provide it with an input and it munges it around and messes it around, comes out with a fixed length number, quite a long number. Usually it's 256 bits or something like that. And the useful thing about cryptographic hash functions is that they are one way. You could take a password, put it in the hash function and get back this number, but given the number you can't find out what the password is. And so that means that if a hacker breaks into the database, then they're given all these numbers, they can't know what the original passwords are, and therefore they can't impersonate you. Or so you would think. But the problem is that people use common passwords again and again, and a lot of people use the same password. The use of password 123, for example, as your password is surprisingly common and rather unfortunate. And so what hackers have done is they've created these things called rainbow tables. They've taken all the common words and common passwords that people use, and they've created a table of all the hashes of those passwords. So when they break into the database, they see all these numbers, and they can actually reverse it in a way because they've brute forced all the common ones, so that they just quickly check to see which accounts have used common passwords because they've ended up with that standard hash output. So the way that the developers get around this is they add something to your password called salt. So you create a random number for each password that a user provides, and you append it to their password and you hash that. So that means that if I have picked password 123 for my password, and you have picked password 123 for your password, the hashes that are stored in the database will be different for you and me, because the database will have this salt number stored against my name and against your name, and they're different salt numbers, and therefore the hash output is different, and therefore the hacker can't determine that we've both used password 123. In fact, they can't even determine that either of us has used that. So that's another protection. And then a third protection that is used is the use of cryptographic hash functions that are really, really slow to run. So the idea here is that brute forcing becomes really, really hard, because they've got the database, they've got the salts, because they're smart hackers and they've managed to break into your unfortunately rather badly secured server, and they've managed to exfiltrate the database of salts and password hashes. So now if they want to brute force that, they might have access to a huge botnet that allows them to do a lot of calculations and allows them to therefore do a lot of brute forcing. However, if the cryptographic hash function takes a long time to run, and by a long time I'm talking here about a time that seems short to a human being, maybe half a second, maybe a second, but if you're going to be running billions and billions of brute forcing attempts, those half a seconds or seconds soon add up to a huge amount of time, and so it makes brute forcing something that, rather than taking days or weeks, will take decades or centuries or hopefully even longer. And the cryptographic hash functions that are used for storing passwords like this have been specifically designed to take quite some time to run. Some of them take quite a bit of memory to run as well. Anything to make it a bit trickier for somebody who's trying to do the stuff again and again and again, whilst not being too slow for somebody who's providing the right input in the first place. So those are three techniques that are used by developers to ensure that your passwords are stored in a manner that prevents hackers from compromising them. And as I said, that's what developers should be doing. Unfortunately, when you look at the history of online accounts and Web 2 over time, you will find plenty examples of companies that have skipped one, two, or even all of these things that I have mentioned. And as a result, we have out on the dark web, and actually not even the dark web, you can find them in GitHub, lists of compromised passwords that have been discovered over the ages. I think there's a text file called rockstar.txt that has something in the region of 100 million or so of these things. So there you go. That's a quick overview of how developers are supposed to protect passwords. I hope you found it educational and interesting, and do feel free to reach out if you have any computer security concerns. Resonance Security is a company that I work and consult for, that deals with these kind of issues to make sure that we are all protected online. I'll see you in the next video soon. Bye for now.